Look, the funny thing about becoming a game designer is that people assume you start in some amazing and cinematic way. Like you wake up one morning with a brilliant idea, you quit your job, and 3 months later, you're signing autographs at GDC. My path looked nothing like that, and I suspect most real designers' paths don't either. Before game development, I was doing the kind of work that slowly drains, but you barely notice that you're fading. Java, SAP, all the enterprise stuff, the kind of code that doesn't create anything. It just maintains the shape of something already was feeling old when you joined.
Not that old.
And I remember being at that airline production company, staring at system logs and thinking, there has to be something more interesting than debugging somebody else's spreadsheets. And yeah, I was right. I just didn't realize how long the road was going to be. The spark, if you can call it that, came from a forum where a bunch of people were trying to make something like Myst, and they needed puzzles. And for reasons I don't fully understand, boredom, I volunteered. I ended up building a whole writing system and a numbering system that was base 12 because it always made more sense to me, and it was better than work. So I spent the nights drawing weird symbols and rules, convinced that none of it mattered, but I was enjoying the feeling of actually creating something for once. And then, pretty much like a joke, I applied to Blizzard. I played World of Warcraft very casually, and I didn't think I had a chance. I was more into Ultima Online and EverQuest, because I was someone that enjoyed the friction of older MMOs, the weirdness, the freedom, and the sense that you were shaping your own story instead of following a preset trail. But they replied. And suddenly I was flying to Paris with barely any sleep from excitement. And I still remember standing out near the Arc de Triomphe, trying to look somewhat professional, and I tripped, falling face first on the pavement and realizing I'd just done that in front of what felt like all of Paris. And there's nothing like smashing your face into a historical monument to set the tone for an interview. And there's probably security footage of that somewhere, so if Blizzard ever wants to blackmail me, they can just use the tape. And somehow, despite all of that, I got the job. So I became a technical specialist. I was helping players and colleagues with issues in WoW and Diablo 3, learning how a massive studio breathes, how the information flows through teams and how decisions get made and how many people it takes for a feature to exist. Spoilers, many. But I also found something else, a way into the designer chats and task boards. So I spent my day lurking, watching and reading their discussions, and eventually offer small suggestions, like small things. Many were ignored, or should I say, politely dismissed, but others landed. But then I suggested something that Blizzard completely disregarded and thought it was radical at the time. What if players had a marker showing where the quest wants them to go? They turned it down by saying that people enjoy figuring things out on their own and that a pointer would ruin the adventure, and nobody would want that feature. Yeah, a few years later, there it is, fully integrated. So, if you opened your map since Wrath of the Lich King and seen those quest markers, you can thank the weird guy that fell on his face in Paris.
Thank you.
You don't have to thank me.
Yes, I do.
But Blizzard changed after the merger with Activision. The mood darkened and the pressure grew and my work slipped a lot. I made many mistakes, real mistakes, the kind that happen when you're exhausted and unsure of your place. They had to let me go. But to this day, they still owe me the welcome pack with a lifetime WoW subscription. I check my mailbox once in a while, but after 18 years, I'm starting to suspect it's not coming. And leaving Blizzard was painful, but it pushed me forward. Came back to Spain, joined Paros, which was the studio behind Commandos, and more importantly to me, Blade of Darkness. It was one of the very first Souls-like before anybody was calling them that. There, I had them build all the QA department for a new game, Planet 51. But I spent more time than I should have hanging around the designers and the artists, asking all kinds of stupid questions, studying all the tools, and trying to understand how their minds work. I wasn't a designer yet, but I was starting to seep in everything that I could. After Paro, my path got very messy. I traveled, worked remotely, and jumped between countries. More of Spain, Italy, Netherlands, Ireland, and I ended up at Amazon under the promise of leading a team for AWS, S3 to be specific. But I ended up landing in a completely different department, the one that you wake up at 4:30 in the morning on a Sunday because there's no public transportation and taxis are the only way to get to work. And after a year of broken promises, a year of schedules that made no sense for anybody who wants to live a human life, I left. And that was the first moment that I really understood that nobody was coming to make my life easier. So if I wanted to design games, I had to build my own path, even if it looked like nothing like the traditional one. So I was in my 30s and I went back to university. It was a very mediocre one, the one that teachers disappeared or taught outdated material. And in the afternoons, I was working at a laptop repair shop, opening broken machines and hoping the owners wouldn't return angry. Sometimes they did, and I had to call the police on a couple of them, but it was messy. In the evenings, I studied design and code, and it felt like training for 2 different marathons at the same time with no idea whether one of them could get me anywhere. And weekends became freelance time, doing small prototypes for mobile games, small mechanics, and small stuff that learned how development actually works, but it's nothing that you can get out of courses or books. So, 2 years of this, 2 years of stress, tiredness, and uncertainty. And somehow I managed to have a stable relationship and social life. I have no idea how. And then one of my tiny projects, which was basically Factorio with towns, became too serious to keep it as a hobby. There were 5 people working with me already, 5 wonderful people who believed that the idea was good enough to stay, and suddenly I had no choice but to form a company. So I got PMP and SMT certification. I learned things like responsible adults are supposed to know when running a studio, and discovered how useless some of it was for actual design, but understood something that took me years to admit out loud. The worst part of having a company is having a company. I didn't want spreadsheets or payrolls or contracts. I just wanted to build smart and meaningful entertainment for players that cared. And still, we made games. Real ones like Rise of Industry, Recipe for Disasters, and others. We built teams. We navigated through chaos and survived moments where everything seemed more like one bad month away from collapsing. I hired people, trained people, decided to try and create a space that felt safer and more honest than all the places that I worked before. But somehow, despite losing money and health and sanity along the way, I managed to give dozens of developers a place to grow. And that's something I carry with more pride than any sales chart. So, when people ask how to become a game designer, they expect a clean path. Study this, learn that, join here. But what actually got me here was curiosity, stubbornness, and embarrassing mistakes, very long nights, a few face plants, some literal and some metaphorical, and the simple belief that games mattered enough to try again and again every time things fell apart. So, if there's any advice in this story, is this: there's no single path. There's only the moment you decide that you're willing to keep walking long enough for one to appear. Because design comes from observing, questioning, building, rewriting, failing, and starting again, and again, and again, and again. And if you're lucky and determined, one day you look around and see a team of people following you. And not because they have to, but because they want to be part of whatever strange idea you insisted was worth making real. And that, to me, is how you become a game designer. Honestly, it's a part of the journey I never trade. See you next time.